Looks like there might not be a unmute all, so we might have to go.
Nope, I don't see it. Yep.
Okay, we'll have to go and manually unmute people here. Actually, they should be able to unmute themselves, actually.
Okay, so will the members of CCEC unmute themselves, and will Kwesi call the roll?
Got it. Alder Carter.
Present.
Alder Carter is present. Alder Abbas.
Present.
Alder Abbas is present. Alder Harrington McKinney.
I'm here.
Alder Harrington McKinney is present. Alder Skidmore.
Here.
Alder Skidmore is present. Alder Hennick. Let's see. He's not here yet. Okay. Alder Tierney.
Could you repeat that?
Alder Tierney.
Here.
Alder Tierney is present. Alder Campbell.
Here.
Alder Campbell is present. Alder Bedard.
Here.
Alder Bedard is present. We're only missing Alder Hennick.
Okay, thank you. Do we have quorum? And at this time, can we get Stephen to read the meeting instructions?
Right. Welcome to our virtual CCEC meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, please activate your video when you're speaking. The chair, clerk, and tech facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the committee, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. President Carter, the floor is back to you.
Thank you. Next, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from July 21st?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. And now can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Alder Tierney, and then also Alder Abbas. Something is going wrong with my screen. We'll just move on. That's okay. Okay, so now we'll go to public comments. For public comments, because our agenda is jam-packed, you will get 3 minutes, and please do not ask for extra time. We will start out with...
Excuse me, Alder Carter, we need to vote on the minutes.
I thought we did. I'm sorry. Let me go back. I don't see anybody, so thank you. Here we go. Here's the people. Can I get a motion? We have a moved and seconded. Anyone that is... does anyone mind if I record a unanimous vote for the minutes? I don't see any hands raised. I will, since there's no objection, I will record a unanimous vote in favor of this item, the minutes. Thank you, Alder Kimball. While I try to work this screen, I don't know why I'm having problems here. Okay, we will go on to public comment. The first person is Shadara Kilfoy Flores. Are you on?
There's nobody here by that name.
Okay.
We have a bunch of registrants for item 5. I'm not sure if we want to wait till item 5 for them to speak on it, where it would just be 3 minutes. We have no...
Well, why don't we wait? Is there any disclosures or recusals while we're waiting? Okay. Attorney Lawton, did you have your hand up? No. Okay, great. So, there are two other people registered for item 5. Wendy Wilmar, available to answer questions, support, do not wish to speak. And Kathleen Fullen, available to answer questions, do not wish to speak. Is Shadara Kilvoy Flores on?
No, she's not.
She's still not on. Why don't we come back to her? And Quasi's going to send out, there's 113 people that are registered. We'll go back to them. On item 6, again, we have Shadara Kilvoy Flores wanting to speak. Kathleen Fullen, Shadara support. Kathleen Fullen oppose. Do not wish to speak, available to answer questions. On item 7, we have Dr. David Sterken, support. Able to answer questions, do not wish to speak. Again, Wendy Wilmar, available to answer questions, do not wish to speak. They are both in support. On item 8, Wendy Wilmar, in support, available to answer questions, do not wish to speak. On item 9, Shadara Kilvoy Flores would like to speak. Dr. Sterken, support, do not wish to speak, available to answer questions. Wendy Wilmar, support, available to answer questions, do not wish to speak. And let me go back to Shadara, who was in support.
Shadira is not here.
Okay.
But I don't know when you want to address this, but on agenda item number 7, we have LUCIEN, who would like to speak, registered opposed, and she is present.
She is present. Okay, I don't have her name, but yes, she can speak. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Lou, you're unmuted.
Okay, so common mistake. I am a man, not a woman.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry.
it's fine. It's fine. So members of the council, executive committee, common council executive committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. I have never in my life spoken at a meeting like this, but I felt it was too important of a topic to be silent. So I'll try to be brief. My name is Lou Short, and I've been a police officer for about 4 years now, with 2 of those years being with the Madison Police Department. When I was made aware of this topic of taking away less lethal options from police officers, I was surprised. After all, these less lethal measures are a direct response to the public's concern about too many officer-involved shootings. The data shows that it has been super effective nationwide in reducing lethal action. I know how it looks in the media when these less lethal options are used on peaceful protesters or for no just cause, and police need to be held accountable for the actions that they take. But I urge you to focus on Madison Police. If there are instances of police officers using less lethal options when it is unwarranted, please bring it up, hold our feet to the fire, and make us answer for what we have done. But in my experience as a Madison police officer, and I know it's been short, I have not witnessed or heard any examples of OC spray, tear gas, or less lethal 40-round sponge projectiles being used without cause. I know you all care for Madison and its residents, and you are trying to make it a city where people feel safe. Just know that we share that same goal. Just last Thursday, a man took a hostage at knife point. Because we had less lethal options available, we were able to handle the situation with no loss of life. Again, I remind you that the only reason we have these options available is because law enforcement listened to the public when there was an outcry about way too many officer-involved shootings. Had we not have these options available, after verbal de-escalation doesn't work, our only choices would be to deploy a taser, which is not always effective, then our firearm. Why would you want to take away tools that have been proven to bring down the number of officer-involved shootings significantly? I'll end my comments by saying this. Although I've been an officer for 4 years, I've been Black my whole life. And although it doesn't happen as often as it used to, I'm still reminded from time to time that as a Black man, I'm seen as a threat. But whether it be a woman clutching a purse when I walk by or being followed when I'm out shopping, I know that people have implicit bias and prejudices, and implicit bias training is part of our curriculum at the academy. But speaking as a Black man that lives in a country where too often the narrative is, I am dangerous just for being Black, I need police officers to have as many options available before they arrive to deadly force. Not just for me, but for every person of color in Madison and the nation. Taking away less lethal options is a step in the wrong direction towards police reform. Thank you for your time, and I can email my statement if need be.
Thank you. Is Shadara back on?
No, she is not.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll go back if she decides to get back in the queue. Let's go to item 5. Oh, I'm sorry. Did anyone have any questions for that speaker? Okay, thank you. Then we'll go to item 5. And who would like to speak on that? Number 60777. Okay.
President Carter, Alder Kimball has your hand up.
Alder Kimball, thank you.
Move to place on file.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been properly moved in second. Does anyone object to me recording a unanimous vote? Raise your hand. Alder Barbara Harrington. You're going to have to unmute yourself. I don't have a...
Okay, I'm unmuted. So I was moving papers around. I just needed to make sure that I caught up to where we were. Was that 60777 that's based on file?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was at the right place.
Okay. So if there's no objections, I will record this as a unanimous vote. Thank you. We will move on to item 6, 60778. And who wants to speak on that one? Alder Kimball, you have your hand up. Can you unmute yourself?
Move to place on file.
Okay, hold on.
Second.
And thank you. So it was moved by Alder Kimball, second by Alder Abbas to place on file. Is there any objections to me recording a unanimous vote? Alder Hennick.
Yes, I just would like to hear some the reasoning behind the motion.
Sure. The reason behind the motion is that the Alder work group has spent the last 5 weeks working on basically alternates to these 2 items, and they are on our council agenda for introduction tonight. And they basically make these 2 items moot.
Thank you.
I think a clarification is that these 2 items are the original items, correct, Alder Kimball?
Well, these 2 items were proposals by the mayor to create a police auditor. And what the Alder work group worked on was creating an entire civilian oversight structure, including the Office of the Independent Monitor, that includes an independent monitor and staff, and a civilian oversight board. So that would make these 2, this position as proposed by the mayor earlier in the year moot, since what the Alder work group has proposed is essentially the structure that the ad hoc committee recommended in their report to us.
Alder Hennick, do you have any other questions regarding that?
No, I just wanted to make sure that the public watching understood kind of what was going on here, because it could easily be confusing.
Correct. Okay, thank you. And we will go on to item 7. Max or Alder Kimball, are you going to be speaking to this? Alder Kimball, you are unmuted.
Okay,
why don't you
be recognized? I'm not sure that we actually voted on that last item, though.
Okay, let's go back. So for item 6, it was moved and seconded. Are there any objections to me recording a unanimous vote? There's no objection, so we will record that as a unanimous vote. We'll move on to item 7. Max, you should be unmuted.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to speak to, so I'm going to be speaking to this ordinance. And I think before I even get into it, I think what this is really about, throughout initial Black Lives Matter protests, police violated their own standard operating procedures with these tools. And I should clarify too that my intent is also to prohibit the use of lethal force as well. I consider myself an abolitionist, and I think this is one step along the path to that, and is an act of harm reduction. So I'm fortunate for this specific motion. I'm going to be reading off some specific examples and some accounts from those protests that I kind of feel demonstrate a need in the first place to prohibit these less lethal force. So the first one is tear gas. The standard operating procedure for demonstrations and assemblies is we protect citizens' constitutional right to assemble, petition the government, engage in free speech. Quote, we protect people first and property second. And then I have a document from the Isthmus journalist Corey Feener. Ariel Leatherwood Fritz was out protesting Sunday evening in Madison's Mansion Hill neighborhood when she got sprayed with tear gas. What is even more painful is the fact that the people who are supposed to be protecting you are inflicting this pain on you. It's traumatic and scary. That hurt the most. Then it later goes on to say the Madison Police Department on the evenings of May 30th and 31st used both tear gas and pepper spray during confrontations with mostly peaceful protesters downtown. The next one you'll see is impact projectiles. I have a specific standard operating procedure violation and use of non-deadly force. And there's a quote specifically in there that says, impact projectiles will not be used to move or disperse crowds. I also have a source from a street medic who is, at the protest that night, who said, I personally witnessed 2 youth take rubber bullets, sponge rounds to the face. And he said, but we're being pushed so hard by the cops, I couldn't stop and get bullets from ground or interview the kids. But yeah, one had an open wound above the eyebrow. I also have a video of them spraying OC spray to face of people treating others on the ground. Lastly, pepper spray. And this is the use of OC spray, a standard operating procedure violation. And there's quite a bit of documentation. I'm listing some specifics now, but there's even more online if we want to look to specific instances. So, ISMS journalist Dylan Brogan reported, officers in riot gear formed a line around 6 p.m. at the intersection of Johnson and State Streets to clear the people who were blocking traffic. Police started spraying pepper spray at demonstrators at close range and walking forward to push people onto the 300 blocks of State Street. Brittany, a UW-Madison student, was hit with mace while trying to help someone who fell into the street as officers marched towards them. Sharon Irwin, Tony Robbins' grandmother, was trying to de-escalate folks, just trying to help, and was pepper sprayed in the face. She later described those events. Shadira Kilford-Flores witnessed these events and posted on Facebook. My friend Sharon Irwin was maced trying to stop people from breaking into Goodman Jewelers. I had to wash pepper spray out of my friend's hair. She was keeping the peace. The police sprayed her dead in the face. And so by me speaking these into the record, I'm showing a clear and harm that was perpetuated by these tools and usage by Madison Police Department's officers, whether it was under unified command or not. And to me, as an elected official here to protect the welfare and the good of this community, I do not have faith that our police department should have these tools and have faith that they will be used as they should be. Given that I have multiple examples of violating standard operating procedures, I think that is enough, grounds for a discussion of different de-escalation tactics and a prohibition on some of these, yes, less lethal, but can be lethal tools that were used against peaceful protesters. So yeah, I asked you to consider that tonight too. All the trauma and the pain that protesters went through, and what could have been prevented if we had this prohibition early on. Thanks.
Thank you. Alder Kimball.
Move adoption.
Just one. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Alder Kimball, second by Alder Abbas. Are there any discussions?
I'd like to speak to this.
I didn't hear you.
Sorry, I just said I'd like to speak to this as the maker of the motion.
Okay, Alder Kimball, go ahead and speak to it. Alder Skidmore is after you, and Alder Hennick's after Alder Skidmore. Go ahead.
Thank you. I signed on to this ordinance change because I also believe that we need to start investing in systems of care and divesting from systems of punishment. And Ald Prestigiaco mentioned multiple incidents of the mishandling of these weapons and these weapons actually hurting people. The OC gas is, a chemical weapon that's prevented by the Geneva Protocols as a weapon of war. And the argument for the use of less lethal weapons being it'll prevent police from killing people. Well, police shouldn't be killing people in the first place. In many countries, police don't even walk around with weapons on their bodies. And we're at a point in time where we can revision what public safety looks like, what the institutions and investments need to look like to ensure the safety of people in our community. And in our community, we have extremely well documented facts that Black people are arrested, have higher police contacts in schools, in the community, than proportionally than any other group of people in our community. So this is, another aspect of institutional racism is through policing. And the argument that we need to provide the police with less lethal weapons so they won't kill people is kind of making an excuse for the police or saying that it's okay for police to kill people, which it's not. Police aren't soldiers. We need police, shouldn't be soldiers, shouldn't be seeing the community as a threat to be at war against. We need our public servants who are trying to create public safety to be addressing the actual root causes of people's behavior that is being antisocial. And we're really not going to do that by maintaining a system of policing as it is, but just tinkering around the edge. The police, choice of using a non-lethal weapon versus a lethal weapon is still the choice to use a weapon against people. And that's not an issue of the weapon itself or what kind of capabilities it has. Are they lethal or non-lethal? And by the way, those impact projectiles can kill people and do kill people. But it's a question of training and orientation to the people in community. And what we need responders to do is to de-escalate. And any kind of weapon escalates a situation. Tear gas escalates. We saw that 3 nights in a row downtown. Throwing tear gas at people who were peacefully protesting escalates the situation and cause more harm. Shooting impact projectiles at people escalates the situation. We have to completely rethink and reimagine how to keep people safe in the community and have a perspective on where is the real harm happening? Where's the real harm, as opposed to responding to people's fears? So that's why I'm supporting this, as well as the next item on our agenda.
Thank you. And Alder Skidmore.
Thank you. Before I make statements, and I will make statements, I'm hoping to ask some questions of Chief Wall.
Chief Wall, can you raise your hand so I can find you? Oh, you're unmuted. That's fine. Go ahead, Alder Skidmore.
Thank you. Chief, I have some questions related to what I consider a false premise for this resolution. And that is that the police are using less than lethal weapons against peaceful protesters. And I did not see that when I was watching the insurrection on State Street. And I have some questions around that. Do you have any evidence that the Madison Police Department or any of its officers made the first move in provoking the people that were breaking the law, not the protesters. I have no question or problem with the protesters. I'm talking about the people that were assaulting, looting, defacing, destroying property, and such like that. Did your officers make the first move to provoke?
I guess the short answer is no. If you look at those first 3 nights where there was riots and unrest, each night there was sort of a triggering event that's caused by people in the crowd engaging in either property damage or violence. And it's only when those actions happened that officers were forced to intervene and disperse the crowd. Now, obviously, there was, 3 extended periods, 3 nights, and we're in the midst of a long review process. And certainly, if there's areas for improvements, we want to identify those and look for ways to do things better. But, since then, we've had 59-ish, 60-plus days of almost daily protest activity where our officers have been able to facilitate movements and deal with a lot of disruption that has stopped short of violence and property damage without any incidents. So I think that sort of demonstrates that it's not the police behaviors in these instances that have resulted in those actions, but the actions of a few people in the crowd.
Okay, maybe I should have asked, thank you for that answer. I think I should have asked a different question first. The first night of insurrection, which followed a day of peaceful protest, started after the police stood down from the protest activities and went back to the police department office. And am I correct in remembering that that the activity really began when some people came down and started conducting themselves in an illegal manner by throwing rocks at the windows and to attempting to provoke the department and do other activities which could be considered illegal?
So on the first day, you're correct that our officers were leaving, we're heading back to the station on foot. There was a group that was following them and sort of harassing them and trying to provoke a response, and the officers ignored them and came into the city county building, and I think sort of thought that the day was over. And then that group, that's when the behavior escalated, starting with damaging a squad car parked outside the building here, and then the group moved down State Street, and the behavior escalated, ultimately starting with looting of one of the businesses down there, and that's what precipitated the officers to deploy and respond.
Thank you. And that leads into my next question. When you did come back, did you observe a peaceful protest, or did you observe a variety of illegal acts of individuals breaking the law and illegal activity?
Well, the latter. When our officers deployed to State Street at that point, it was clearly had moved beyond a peaceful protest, and there was property damage taking place as well as some violence we saw.
Okay, my last question for now, I want to focus on behavior. And this is what this is all about, managing behavior. I know that there have been daily protests. I've been briefed on them. And I also note that I've been told by captains and patrol officers and others in the department that many of the individuals in these quote unquote protests are heavily armed with assault rifles, handguns, machetes, and that they're armed while conducting acts of civil disobedience. Can you confirm that your officers have witnessed individuals that are armed while participating in these events?
Yeah, there have been. I don't think I would qualify it as many, but there certainly have been some folks openly carrying firearms, and then at least one openly carrying a number of edged weapons, long knives and machetes. And so that is something that's been a recurring theme that we've seen.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now. I will be speaking on this after questions are through.
Okay, thank you, Alder Skidmore. Alder Hennick, did you move out of queue? Okay. Okay, Alder Hennick.
Yes, I was just gonna ask the sponsors. We've seen a lot from the ad hoc committee, and recommendations number 126 and 127 are specifically focused on less than lethal force options for the police department. And so one question I had was how that, or why that's changed, and kind of what we're looking at for other options for the ad hoc's recommendations.
Alder Kimball, do you want to answer that, or Alder Max? Okay.
Sure, I can give my answer. My answer is that what's changed is the historical moment we're in right now. And I think the ad hoc committee recommendations came out last fall. And all, if not most of them, are really geared towards harm reduction and improving the police as they currently exist. But I think you heard our colleague Ald Prestigiaco and me state clearly that we're in a historical moment where there are not only demands being made, but a lot of more understanding about what police abolition means, and we're seeing the effects and really the mass uprising of people, especially Black people and other people in support of Black lives. To say that Black people have been disproportionately and pretty horrifically affected by police violence and police killings and the mass incarceration system in this country. And we as elected officials need to think beyond just improving the police system as it is, but look beyond that and think about completely transforming public safety in a way that supports the health and well-being of all people, including people who might be behaving antisocially. And we need to do that without violence and without killing them. So I think that's the thing that has changed really, is the moment in history that we're in. The elaboration of policy alternatives and a real embracing of the protecting of Black lives by transforming the systems that are disproportionately harming them.
Okay, thank you. Alder Hennick, do you want to respond before I go to the next speaker?
So I just had a follow-up question for Chief Wall. Chief, could you give us a little overview of how often these tools are used historically?
So there's a couple different categories, obviously. So impact projectiles historically are used infrequently. They're used in a patrol capacity, typically, in a situation with someone with an edged weapon or something like that. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but single digits per year. Obviously, this year with the riots, were clearly an aberration in a number of situations, but we've been using these types of things for years, and single digits every year. Tear gas or CS is even less frequent in a crowd control context. I think we might have used CS gas back in the early 2000s in the student riots, and then we're back to the Vietnam era for CS gas in a crowd control environment. Occasionally it gets used in a tactical, high-risk SWAT operation, but again, that's single digits per year. The most common one would be pepper spray. That's what every officer carries on their belt. And that you're talking, double digits per year. So that's more commonly used and is a more common tool used in a number of contexts. And something that actually, we is an option that is just not going to cause any injury, which is unlike some of the other tools and techniques that we use. So it's a benefit to it.
Thank you. So I guess that sounds to me like if we've, especially in the crowd control measure, we've used it, less than 5 times in the last 3 decades. And it sounds to me with the response and kind of the discussion from the sponsors that this is more of a abolitionist legislation to dissolve the police department than even limiting the tools used. And that sounds to me like when it's being based off of an event that happens less than 5 times in 3 decades is almost the definition of a knee-jerk reaction. And I think that is a very dangerous proposal, and I will not support it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Alder Hennick. I will go to Alder Heck and then Alder Abbas. Everyone's hands up. And then after that, Alder McKinney. And then I'll come back to you, Alder Kimball. I see your hand.
Thank you, President Carter. I have a question for Attorney Haas. Let's see. There he is. Thank you. I just kind of want to understand the differences in approach between this agenda item and agenda item 9, and in that this is an ordinance change, and agenda item 9 has the commonality of dealing with tear gas is what connects those two. This one is an ordinance change, and item 9 is a resolution. And I wondered if you could explain in the end, if you assume that both of these pass, what is the difference between the results of each approach?
Sure. I think if you assume both pass, you have to really go with the structure of the two. In the case of tear gas, it would be the ordinance prohibiting its use immediately upon publication and enactment of the ordinance. The resolution, of course, is accompanied by the requirement for a study of alternatives. If it passes, that would also need to take place. But in the event that the resolution would not pass and the ordinance did, of course, you would still have that in place. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
I'm really kind of asking about the difference in approach, in one being an ordinance change and one being a resolution.
Well, I think, from a legal standpoint, they both would have the same effect as far as they go to prohibit tear gas, mace, impact projectile devices. I think whether it's in an ordinance or a resolution would have the same legal effect as far as a directive to the police department.
So the item 9 that's a resolution would have just as much effect as the ordinance change, and there's not a advantage or disadvantage to either approach if you're trying to accomplish something?
Right, and it also goes to, the way it could be changed in the future, whether it's an ordinance or resolution, would need to be changed in the same way. But yes, there's no legal difference except for the timing of when it would go into effect, and then again how it would have to be changed in the future.
And any changes to either the resolution, the one that's enacted by the resolution and one that's enacted by ordinance, is really pretty minor. It just means you pass another resolution or you pass another ordinance or an ordinance repeal or change.
Correct. You need to change it in the same way it was enacted. So under our process, it's, if you go through the normal process, it's essentially the same. In some municipalities, resolution is easier to change than an ordinance. It requires less meetings. But here, there's probably not a significant difference.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Heck. Alder Abbas.
Thank you. I have one question for the chief. Chief, you mentioned about some single-digit events where these tools has been used previously. My question to you is this: if those tools, according to this ordinance agenda item we have, is taken off or is not available for the cops, I'm just assuming, just assumption, and those single-digit in future events happen, do you have any other non-lethal technique or under your training process which can be used, or could you explain a little more? Is there any other available tools are available to handle those situations?
Basically, the options that we would have remaining would be batons, a wood baton, a taser, and a firearm, and our empty hands. And so certainly you'd be taking a giant step backwards in terms of capacity, in terms of options, and looking at a number of those instances, particularly for the impact projectiles. I think clearly there are situations where officers have been compelled to be involved in, been compelled to act, and where there simply was not an opportunity for de-escalation or disengagement. And clearly the only option or alternative in some of those would have been deadly force. So unfortunately, that's what the officers would have been left with.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder Boss. Alder McKinney.
Okay, do I need to unmute myself?
I think you're unmuted.
I will supporting this, and I am going to reference something that Officer Liu mentioned in his testimony, and it was released. It's a police incident report, and it is dated July the 3rd. And I'm going to read it into the record since Ali read his statement. Officers were able to successfully, let me start here. This is not where it says. City of Madison police officer responded, and I'll leave out the address. Reference report of a disturbance. Initial forwarded to the Dane County Dispatch was that an African-American male was engaged in a physical altercation with an African-American female. The statement by the female, she felt he was about to kill her. The person pulled the victim into an elevator. She was strangled to the point of blacking out. Suspect was now pointing a knife at her. The elevator opened and she and the perpetrator fell out. MPD arrived. The victim was in a bear hug and was alternating placing a knife at her throat and at her stomach. Officers yelled for him to drop the weapon. He did not. They deployed a 40 millimeter less lethal sponge round from a launcher, a tool Chief Wall believes should be in all frontline MPD vehicles. The sponge round caused the perpetrator, I will not mention the name, to fall to the ground. The victim went with him. He still had the knife to her throat. Several officers discharged tasers, causing the perpetrator to drop the knife. The victim suffered several non-life-threatening injuries, including cuts and neck bruises. And so I mentioned that because I understand that we are in a time And we are reacting to a series of over 400 years of African Americans, Black people being abused by police. I went back and looked at a documentary, the first police officer in Chicago that shot a Black male 16 times. And so I'm quite aware of all of the ramifications that we're talking about. But in instance, when you totally remove the opportunity for officers to not act and pulling a gun and shooting anybody, but when you remove all of the alternative things that they have access to, I'm having a problem understanding that, because if you're removing all of the tools that they have access to, and there is a situation that calls for some action, then what are you leaving officers to do? I mean, this is a prime subject. It was not during the demonstrations. It was not in the midst of what was experienced downtown, but I'm talking about a real life incident where someone's life was in danger and the police had an alternative to use to de-escalate a situation. I don't know if the police would have been able to talk this person down. I don't know that, but what was before them was a woman who had a knife through her throat and an individual who did not comply. And so in this instance, one extreme to the other, and taking those opportunities away from the police, I absolutely believe that some of these items should not even be in the arsenal. I get that, but to totally remove the usage of all non-lethal, and I won't say weapons, all non-lethal access disturbs me greatly. And I think that, as my colleague said, it's a knee-jerk. We're not going to solve all the problems of the world that we've been facing as Black and brown people in one fell swoop. And this amendment, as this a resolution as it is presented, does that. And I am not going to support it because I think it's a knee-jerk reaction, and I think it is too it's over the top.
Thank you, Alder McKinney. Alder Tierney, you should be unmuted.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I hadn't had a chance to reach out to Chief Wall, but I think it's great that at the East District, two of the officers stationed at the East District last week were able to save the lives of children. The 3-month-old that was choking, and the 5-year-old, I think her age was, who almost drowned at Dream Park. So I think it speaks well of the department that we have officers that step forward and do their job so well. And even the one officer when he was off duty. I guess one of the concerns I have with this is that my understanding is that if it were to be implemented, other departments that might provide mutual aid assistance, if they were restricted in their ability in terms of what their officers could employ in a situation where there's violence, vandalism, etc., that they would not honor an agreement to send officers to assist Madison police. So if that's the case, if other departments weren't sending in their officers to provide backup for Madison police at the site of a riot or however you want to phrase the type of conduct that we've been seeing, then I have a concern that, like the East District, then you'd have officers going from the East District downtown and then creating law enforcement problem for this area of town, for the southeast side. I know we're seeing a horrific number of shootings going on, and I know I hear from a lot of residents in my district. They believe that one of the reasons we've seen an increased number of shootings is because the focus of the police department has had to be downtown. And so it is a concern in terms of if we remove non-lethal tools from the tool chest, that results in police officers, police departments from other municipalities not helping when needed. Then do we run into a situation where, other areas of the city then would be short-staffed in terms of, policing needs? I guess that's the primary concern I'm hearing. So.
Well, I agree, and I think it's probably a greater concern than that because, if you look at those 3 nights of unrest, and we would not have been able to do anything without the assistance from outside agencies. And certainly outside departments are not going to send their folks someplace where they can't use the appropriate tools. And we can just look on the road to Milwaukee and see that playing out now, where they've had some directives about CS gas and the DNC, and have had dozens of agencies pull out and say, we're not going to assist you. And Milwaukee is really scrambling now to get adequate staffing to police the DNC because of that. And so they've had to backtrack on some of those directives, and it's a very real risk and a very real concern.
Okay, thank you, Alder Attorney, thank you. And we will go to Alder Kimball and then Alder Skidmore.
I think my point is, how about we take a serious look at the cause of unrest so that there doesn't have to be any unrest and there doesn't have to be any police response. But I raised my hand because I think, President Carter, you said that there was a Dr. Sterken who was registered available to answer questions on this item.
Correct.
I guess I'd like to ask him to come in and share his opinion on this topic with us.
Okay, hold your question. Stephen, is Dr. Sterken on the line?
Yes, he is.
Okay, go ahead, Alder Kimball, with the question.
No, I just would like him to share his thoughts and opinions on this matter with us.
Dr. Sterken?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. So I'll be brief. I hadn't prepared any comments, but medically, this is a fairly straightforward issue, so it shouldn't be too difficult to discuss. So I'm a hospital medicine physician in Madison. My statements don't necessarily reflect those of my employer, but there are many other healthcare professionals who would also support such a ban, including signatories of several open letters and the American Thoracic Society, which formally called for a moratorium on the use of these agents on June 11th. There are many reasons for this, including well-described short and long-term health effects of these agents, but also especially the increased risk that this poses to all of society during the COVID-19 pandemic. ATS and the CDC have described a risk of developing chronic bronchitis, compromised lung function, and acute lung injury. And military studies have shown a 2.44 times greater risk of acquiring a respiratory illness such as influenza after exposure to tear gas. These agents also obviously promote the production of tears and saliva and respiratory secretions, make people cough, which very obviously would increase the transmission of the SARS-CoV-2 virus and poses a great risk to society based on that. These are also imprecise weapons that can harm bystanders, including members of the press, emergency medical personnel. And since tear gas contaminates skin and clothing of its victims, it can also result in secondary exposures to personnel in the hospital, and has in the past actually necessitated evacuations and closures of emergency departments, which place great burdens on our healthcare system, delay the care of patients, and have serious long-term effects for everyone involved. But I would briefly like to just address the central premise of this, because one of the main factors of being a healthcare provider is that we practice evidence-based medicine. So every time we're making a decision, we have to decide if the risk outweighs the benefits. And the central premise of this question is that there is a benefit to using tear gas, and that doing so would prevent harm to persons or harm to property. However, there have been several federal commissions that have looked into this question, and all have concluded that actually these only serve to escalate protests and lead to more violence and more property damage. So I would actually say that the burden of proof is on the police department in this situation to prove that there is actually a benefit to these agents. I would also mention that in all the scenarios described by Ald Prestigiaco and others during this conversation, there wouldn't have been a reason to use lethal force or batons. And if tear gas and other agents such as that are used so rarely, then that might suggest that they are not really necessary at all. And when they're used, it is unnecessary. Lastly, just to close, I don't know everything about the standard operating procedures for this that are relevant to the use of these agents. But I do know that in the use of non-deadly force, the only sentence that I saw on chemical agents besides pepper spray was that officers shall discourage chemical agents only in a manner as shall discharge chemical agents only in a manner as prescribed by the chief of police through MPD training, which is entirely subjective and to me does not put any prohibitions on their use or any guidelines on when to use them or not. So I would say that the current state of the standard operating procedures are insufficient, kind of regardless of where you stand on this issue. But medically speaking, I hope I've made the case that this is really, it's not a question of risk and benefit. This is really all just harm.
Thank you. Alder Skidmore.
Thank you. I do have a few comments. I know we're up against a time crunch here, but I agree with my colleagues that are in opposition to this proposal. And I also wanted to reiterate that my questions for Chief and some of the other questions were that these less than lethal weapons were used not on peaceful protesters, but on individuals who had pushed into illegal activities, dangerous activities, including arson and violent acts toward people as well as property, and that I do consider that a justified use and a non-lethal means of ending it. I also find it very significant, and I note the honesty of Alder Kemble, our colleague, who said that this is not about police reform, this is about police abolition. And that, strikes a different note in me and something that's more fearful. It's a change in our governance system by taking away the ability of the police department to exist, let alone use less than lethal tools, is a very serious change that we need to be talking about. And I have a feeling now that will be a subject of our discussions. The narrative isn't just reforming police, but abolishing them. I will be opposing this measure, and I will be opposing the others that are similar to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, how much time do we have? Do we have a little bit of a buffer?
We have about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. Obviously, we're going to have to hold a special CCEC meeting this month. This was a jam-packed agenda, and I want to make sure that we have sufficient amount of time to discuss all the items, but we will carry on. Ald Prestigiaco, you're next. And can you turn on your video so that anyone watching can see who's talking? You should be asked to unmute yourself.
I've tried a couple times to unmute you. You should also be able to just unmute yourself without a prompt.
There we go. Can you hear me? Oh yeah, sorry about that. My screen is glitching. Yeah, I just really wanted to comment on that and say, everything that you talked about, Alder Skidmore, I would say that's what I stand for and what my generation stands for. And really, to reiterate what Alder Campbell had to say, we are here to reshape society, and we have an opportunity to do so. And I think it's interesting too, because I know some people are coming in here and saying, "Oh, this is crazy!" Like they want to ban non-lethal weapons. And what I would say is that these are the ideas of my generation and younger generations that are taking the reins of leadership that will at some point. And so I think that's important to recognize too, is that, it's scary to talk about abolitionism, but that's what my generation, that's what constituencies are waking up to support. So it might sound controversial, but again, what we're here to do is do harm reduction, reduce harm on marginalized communities, and we're here to have those bigger, uncomfortable policy discussions. Thank you.
Okay. If there's no more discussion on this item, it's been moved and seconded. Oh, just one moment. Alder McKinney.
Hey, I wanted to say to Alder Prestigiaco, I can pronounce your name, so I won't say Junior Alder this time, is that we welcome those discussions, and we absolutely understand that there must be a shift in the way that we move forward. But that shift is a discussion, and this with the any pushes us to making a decision that we have not completely vetted. I mean, we might eventually, yes, we might get to that point. But today, as we face it, moving and having those discussions and looking at the SOPs and all of those things that are faced with us now, we're not running away from that. But for today, to say that we are removing all of the possible tools from the police that they can use, we're not there yet. And I cannot, and that is why I'm not supporting the supporting a resolution at this time, because we're not there yet. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, it looks like we have no hands in queue at the moment. Okay, it was properly moved and seconded. Are there objections to recording a unanimous vote? Just one moment. Alder Skidmore.
I'm requesting a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Kwesi, can you call the roll?
Yep. Alder Boss?
No.
Alder Harrington McKinney?
No.
Alder Skidmore?
No.
Alder Hennick?
No.
Alder Channing? No. Alder Campbell?
Aye.
We have 5 no's and 1 yes.
Motion fails. The item fails, I'm sorry. I'm going to do a time check. Stephen, where are we?
About 5 minutes.
Okay. If there's no objection, and Attorney Haas, you can tell me if this is in order or out of order or whatever. I would like to schedule a special meeting to talk about the remainder items. unless you feel that we can talk about 8 and 9 in 5 minutes. It's been my experience that we're not that quick, but miracles can happen. Alder Kimball.
I'd like to move to refer the remainder of the agenda to a special meeting that the president will call in August.
And do I have a second? It's been properly moved. Alder.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved in second. I will, if there's no objection, I will record a unanimous vote to refer these 2 items. And can I add, without objection, the 2 updates also to the special meeting? Doesn't look like anyone's objecting to that. So I will move, I would record a unanimous vote to refer the items 8, 9, 10, and 11 to a special meeting in August. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Anybody?
Second.
It's been moved in second. I'll record a unanimous vote for adjournment. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you in about 45 minutes. Alder Hennick, you have your hand up? No. Okay, thank you.